creatures must do. I'm going to try to speak without the microphone. I have a fairly loud voice. My mother always told me that forever. So if you can't hear me, tell me, louder?
Stand up.
Louder.
Stand up. They can't hear back there, but if you stand up, it might help.
Okay, you'll probably have it right. But first of all, I feel very privileged to be amongst these ladies,
Stand up, use a microphone.
Four score and 7 years. All right, I'm now moving over. But I feel very privileged to be here. It's a great part of it. It's not a real microphone, is it? Hello?
Oh, yes.
All right, you earned it. You're going to get it. Thank everyone of my friends that came here, and as I say, the checks in the mail. But, I'll tell you a little bit about Norton's Lament. Norton's Lament was a novel I began about maybe 2-3 years ago, and it was going to be like a J.D. Salinger kind of thing, Catcher in the Rye, young man coming of age, the various peccadillos he gets into, the adventures and the mishaps and that sort of thing. Coming of age in the latter half of the 20th century. But as I got into it, I discovered that Norton ran into something else in his life, which was depression, major depression, which would come to him and then leave him and would affect his life from that moment on. So it continues to be a book about a guy as he comes up and faces various things that he is going through and is still able to confront, then maintain, and then perhaps even manage a life despite this recurrent depression. So, and there's a lot of humor in here, so don't get up yet. So I'd like to read you just a couple of passages, one which is self-explanatory, and the second is largely self-explanatory. So I'll let them explain themselves. If you have a book, and if you want to read along on page 5, part of the Accelerated Dropout Program. In September of 1964, I began a promising life as a freshman. I guess I'll just stop myself here for a minute. The reason the book took a different shift is because depression affects millions of Americans, and millions more of those are indirectly affected by it. So I thought it was worthy that the book take that twist. So now we'll go back to the beginning. In September of 1964, I began a promising life as a freshman at Washington Lee University, a small liberal arts college in southwestern Virginia. By the spring of 1966, after about a year and a half of college matriculation, I had joined a cool Southern fraternity, met girls, danced, partied, drank a lot, and coasted academically. English majors can often do that for a while, as long as they show up for most of their classes, and as long as they can string together a sentence or two. In my sophomore year, the facade had fallen apart. I had come to know not who I was, but who I was not. And despite all the fraternity parties and the drinking and the girls and the dancing, and although I did like the dancing and the girls and the great Motown music of the mid-60s, that was simply not enough when you are a sophomore and don't know who you are, what you believe, and your biggest daily goal is the nightly sleep to take you away from it all, however briefly. Seamlessly, I embarked on my own accelerated dropout program. The catalyst came on a Sunday hungover morning when I found myself sitting cross-legged at the foot of a bed in the room of 2 of my fraternity brothers. We were enjoying the early spring sun that streamed through a window and were contemplating the possibility of crawling out that window onto the red tin roof to possibly get an early tan. We contemplated, but did not act upon the tanning opportunity. That's what sophomores often do, contemplate, but do not act. There were 4 of us sophomore brothers in the room, Charlie Mayfield and Chris Parsons, whose room it was, and Earl Bowman and myself. Earl and I shared a room just down the hall. Chris Parsons from Atlanta, short and stocky, with carefully combed receding blonde hair, was quick with a joke or a caustic observation as he lit up yet another Marlboro and inhaled deeply. Seated in an armchair across from me was Charlie Mayfield from Kentucky, Slight, athletic, and a former true believer, Charlie was now gently and honestly and humorously testing his Christian boundaries. Sophomores often do. My roommate, Earl Bowman, also from Atlanta and sometimes known as Kong, was 6 foot even, 220 pounds, 25 pounds heavier than his playing weight, but still reminiscent of his days in the Baylor High School football team as an all-state linebacker. He was firm and unyielding in his beliefs, self-righteous and sure, contemptuous of those who did not measure up. He had chosen me as a sophomore roommate because he believed I was bright and funny and was good with girls. But as a depressed and slumping sophomore, I had not measured up on any of these accounts. And accordingly, Earl decided to interrogate me on that fall spring day in March of 1966. Earl propped himself up on Chris's bed, which he had usurped. He had his head cradled in his hand, supported by his massive upturned elbow. He looked like a snapping turtle, and he turned his head towards me and spoke. Norton, what the F's wrong with you? You don't go down the road anymore, you don't talk to anyone, you act like a whipped puppy dog. You're all down at the mouth. What is it? Do you just feel sorry for yourself? I mean, you really bore the ass out of me. Hell, you bore the ass out of all of us. Now, what the F is your problem? I could see now that my depression actually enraged Earl in all his beliefs. His was not a sympathy talk, but rather an interrogation of someone he found no longer worthy. I had become, in fact, the accused. Chris, also a Baylor boy, sat on the edge of the other bed, watching carefully as he flicked the ash from his cigarette. Charlie Mayfield looked on with interest. His dangling loafer on his right foot was pumping up and down as he struggled to understand what was going on. It seemed that he too was waiting to hear what I had to say. I decided to be candid with him and just spit it out. I don't know, Earl. It started last summer after my freshman year, a kind of black hole depression. I can't really explain how or why it started. It just kept getting worse. Now it seems to have covered me up. None of this life, the school, the fraternity, the parties, the books, the girls, even you guys, nothing means anything to me anymore. The only thing I feel is fear and self-loathing and emptiness. I just feel dead inside. That's all. This as I looked around at my fellow fraternity brothers. Earl paused just a moment, peered down from the bed on which he was sitting, and looked at me sitting cross-legged on the floor and said, "That's a load of crap. What you want is for everyone to feel sorry for you. You're just a spoiled asshole. You say you feel dead inside, why don't you just go ahead and kill yourself?" He looked at me, smiling, not unlike a wolf that had cornered a sheep. He laughed the hard staccato laugh. The others giggled nervously. "Well, so you're really thinking about suicide, eh, Norton? Is that what you're trying to tell us?" Earl was clearly enjoying himself. "Yes, I guess I am, Earl," I said. It was probably the truest thing I had shared with anyone in a long time. I thought suicide might be the cleanest way to end my obsession with that constant inner dull pain that never left me. The fear, the confusion, the meaninglessness, and the consummate loneliness. I'd thought about it a lot. Yeah, maybe oblivion was the only way out. "Well, wait right there for just a minute. I'll be right back." Earl ran down the hallway to the room he shared with me, returned with a holstered pistol. As he pulled it out of its holster, I recognized it as the .38 Smith & Wesson that he had shown me many times before. He kept it for target practice and for protection in case, quote, some stupid son of a bitch tries to steal something from him. He squatted down so that he could look me straight in the eye. I was still sitting cross-legged on the floor. He handed me his pistol, butt out, so that I grasped it by the handle. "Go ahead, Norton," he said. "It's loaded. Go ahead and shoot yourself if you really mean it. Go on. Do it if you mean it." Yeah, you'll have to read the rest of that chapter as soon as you purchase this economically valued book. But I will just move us along just a little bit. Norton is able to leave that. He is able to find a job outside of school, and the depression leaves him. He joins the Naval Reserve. He gets a job as a ticket agent for Trailways in Lynchburg. Still in the back of his mind is this lurking thing, but he's dealing with it. So here we are in Lynchburg, where he's just settled in at his rooming house. Each morning when I woke up in my small one-room Rivermont Avenue apartment, it was a little bit like the Tin Man checking to see if he still had his new heart. I was afraid I might wake up without it. that this feeling of joy would have magically exited my body and soul during the night, and I would be left with that black depression that had covered me up for so long. I sometimes would think of myself like Ben Gazzara of the popular TV show of the time, Run for Your Life, about a man who was told by his doctor he only has 6 months to live, and he's determined to make the most of it. I remember that warm spring day in 1966 when I found myself walking briskly towards Randolph-Macon Women's College. I was going to get together with Sally Melbourne, the girl I briefly met at a fraternity party the year before. On a whim, and because I knew virtually no one else from the old days in Lynchburg, I'd gotten up the courage to call her, not knowing what we would have in common given our current relative circumstances. But when I told her a little bit about dropping out of Washington Lee, the somewhat abortive trip to Florida, and that's in the book too, and how I came to find myself in Lynchburg employed as a ticket agent, she had laughed out loud. Well, since you work from 3 to 11, you can't exactly ask me out for a date, can you? Melbourne was always direct. Yeah, I guess it's a bit difficult, I said slowly. I just wanted to say hello. Good, said Melbourne. So why don't you come over for lunch here at the college? We have pretty good food, and for some reason there are 3 different cafeterias. This means by rotating, you can come 3 times a week for free lunch without appearing to be too much of a freeloader. She laughed again, but it was as if she was sharing the joke with me, not at my expense. It was as if we were beginning a delicious little conspiracy together. Us against the school, us against the world, a conspiracy of gentleness and laughter in which no one was hurt. Well, that's great, Melbourne, I said. That's great. Randy Mack cafeteria conspiracy begins. I'll start lunch tomorrow, if you're serious. Oh yes, Norton, I'm serious. I've never had a date with a Trailways ticket agent before. You just get over here at high noon tomorrow. I'll be there, I said. Can I bring anything? No, but I might make you sing for your supper, so to speak. What'd you have in mind? Oh, I don't know, Melbourne said. How about a cafeteria call-out of Trailways bus stations from Lynchburg to New York City? You would have me do this out loud right there in your school cafeteria? I might, she said. Well, I welcome the challenge. Good. And Norton, yes. Bring me something from the ground. See you tomorrow. Melbourne laughed again and rang off. That was yesterday. I jumped yet another sidewalk crack as I walked along. I wanted all the luck the day might bring, and I certainly didn't want to break my mother's back. In my hands were a bunch of 6 pink primroses, a gift from Mrs. Tompkins, my 81-year-old landlady, and thanks for my help on the yard the day before. Well, Norton, she had said, I do believe this is the first time I've seen this kind of fire in your eyes since we met. I'll be guessing it's about that college girl. I couldn't help but hear you talk with her on the hallway payphone last night. She handed me a small bouquet of flowers. Well, these primroses are from my earliest blooming garden bushes. They're guaranteed to make that girl smile. And that's what you want, isn't it? To make her smile. I smiled myself as I looked down at the beautiful spring flowers and replied, yes, ma'am. They are something from the ground, and I think they'll do just that. Make her smile. Thank you.